New setup. Who dis? Yes, I have a bookshelf behind me now. It is the same bookshelf that was over there in that really awkward spot that I filmed the last video in. Now it's by my desk and I have a nice monitor arm that's holding up my monitors so that I'm not craning my neck to kind of do things and edit and all that sort of fun stuff. So positive changes, and there's enough room here for another bookshelf the second it goes back into stock, because they had every other colour but the grey that I decided to buy 3 years ago when we moved in here. But I digress. Welcome to my January wrap-up. January was an odd month for reading. I kind of just didn't quite mesh with everything I was reading. Didn't have any 5 stars whatsoever. It was odd, but I'm gonna wrap it up for you. So yeah, I've only got 2 of them physically. The rest of them were either audiobooks or ebooks that I borrowed or I own. But yeah, let's just get into it. The first book that I listened to, because it was an Audible exclusive, and it was Thicker Than Water by Tyler Schultz. This was about 5 hours long, I think it was. It was like an audio exclusive story of how Tyler Schultz, like his perspective of the Theranos scandal, as he was one of the whistleblowers. And the interesting position that he was in was that his grandfather, who had worked with the government quite a lot as well, especially in the Reagan administration, his grandfather was a shareholder in Theranos at the time, and they were basically pitted against each other. And this whole scandal that came about, there was lots of gaslighting and all that sort of stuff. They were tracking him and his friends and all this sort of stuff, and it was like a true crime TV show, documentary, but in audio form, which I thought was really unique. And I mean, if anyone's going to do it, it's more than likely to be Audible with the funds that they've got. So yeah, I enjoyed it. I thought it was very enjoyable, and it gave me a bit more insight into the Theranos scandal that I didn't know about. So yeah. The next book I read was On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous by Vuong. And it's written like a memoir, I'd say. It's written in the form of letters from the protagonist to their mother, who is a Vietnamese immigrant in the US. And it's just this collection of beautifully written, heartfelt, I suppose kind of like essays and about making sense of the world and making sense of his sexuality and making sense of the way he felt othered in society, as well as the loss of a lot of his friends through the OxyContin scandal. I'm not very good at articulating today, apparently. I am feeling super rough, which is why I am doing this rather than massively editing up a big video that I was probably going to put out today. But yeah, this has really interesting narratives on grief, on loss, on belonging, on going back to Vietnam, on the whole OxyContin scandal and all this. So yeah, I found it to be really, really interesting. This wasn't a 5-star for me. I gave it a 4 stars. It didn't make me cry, and I feel like it could have made me cry, and it didn't. And that's, I think, why I left it where it was. It's also quite short, but it took me forever to get through. It was one of the sort of books that you read a passage, and you were like, okay, I'm gonna sit on that, you know? I'm gonna sit on that and deal with that, and then I'll come back to it later. I'm interested to see what my sisters think of this, because we've got our book club discussion this afternoon. So yeah, I think looking at Goodreads, one of my sisters gave it a 2, so I'm intrigued to see them, and then the other one agreed with me and gave it a 4. So yeah, it's gonna be a fun discussion. The next book I read was The Ocean at the End of the Lane by Neil Gaiman. This was for Alison Page's Pocket Pages book club, and having read Coraline for that a couple of months ago, I was unsure of how I would feel about this, because I enjoyed Coraline, but I didn't find it to be as interesting to me now I was all grown up, if that makes sense. But this spoke to me. I really liked this. It still wasn't quite a 5-star, it was again another 4-star for me, but something interesting about it was the way it kind of dealt with the way adults look back at their memories of childhood, because a lot of this is left pretty grey in the sense of whether or not these events actually happened. Like, something happens to the protagonist and you could kind of see how it could have been blown up out of proportion by a child. This child is 8 years old, by the way, but it is told as an older man looking back at his hometown and the memories that came from it. So it plays interestingly with the way that we handle our own memories of childhood as well, and I think that's why I liked it as much as I did. I've read a couple of Neil Gaiman things, and while his sense of humour is kind of good to me, I never find that I truly love his stuff. Like, I've read Coraline and I thought it was humorous and like I got the deeper meaning, but it didn't like resonate. This almost resonated, and Good Omens just unfortunately really missed the mark for me last year. It put me in a massive reading slump, and then I got the audiobook and then I just listened through it because I kind of wanted to get it done, and it didn't hit me. So I'm a bit wary of Neil Gaiman, but not to the point where I won't read anything by him. So there's that. My sister Molly actually recommends American Gods, so I think I will have to have a look at that one. The next book I read was Sandworm by Andy Greenberg. This is a non-fiction about cyber warfare and the rising situation of state-sponsored hacking, especially in Russia. And I picked it up before I even put 2 and 2 together, but at university I'm now doing a cybersecurity defense module, so it fitted quite well, and it worked out to be really convenient for me because it gave me a good insight into what was going on in the world around us at the moment, which is mainly centered around Ukraine, and that's very, very current right now, even though these attacks have been going on since 2015, 2016 sort of time. But also how Russia were trying to hide that it was them. How they were trying to give it a fingerprint that maybe pinned it towards North Korea in certain instances. Like, for example, in the hacking of the Winter Olympics in Pyeongchang. It was relatively easy for me to digest, being someone who doesn't read that much non-fiction. You kind of needed a little bit of background in computing to understand it, but not so much that you would need a degree. As long as you really know what computers are and how a virus works, you should be good. And to be honest, there's so much more I want to learn coming out of it. Yeah, super interesting to me. And the last set of books I read was the Uglies Quadrilogy by Scott Westerfeld. So that is Uglies, Pretties, Specials, and Extras. The first 3 are really the trilogy, with Extras being a companion novel that features some of the characters from the first series. I went back to these because I wanted to do a vlog on reading over some books that I remember really liking from my childhood. And I remember really liking Uglies and never getting any further than Uglies. Having gone back to it, I just, even in hindsight, I wish I'd even rated them lower than I did. I gave them 3 because it was like fine. I enjoyed it enough, and I gave pretty much all of them 3, I think. I just felt like the hidden meanings that they were going for felt really slapped on. It felt like it was slapping you around the face with these hidden meanings that weren't very hidden. For example, the whole concept of humans are bad because they're greedy. Yeah, I get it. We are. That wasn't in contention. And then even in the companion novel, which came out a bit later and delves more in the social media side of things, yeah, it's just one and the same. Like, I don't need to be slapped around the face to say fame is bad, humanity is bad. Like, I know that. I felt like the story in itself got a little bit draining after the second book. The friendship, or the relationship between Tally and Shay, drove me nuts. Like, beyond belief. Tally as a 16-year-old girl, like, in the first book, yeah, fine. But the whole trilogy exists within about 6 months. So by the end, she's still 16. And there, in my head, I'm like, there is no way a 16-year-old is like that. Not in any sense of the word. And while I understand that there may be some other factors at play that could change the maturity of the character, I don't want to spoil anything, it wouldn't to that degree, surely. And it just made it so unrealistic to the point where I couldn't enjoy it. I just sat there rolling my eyes a lot of the time. So, hate me if you want to hate me, or hate 16-year-old Meg that decided this was a really good book. Either or. I don't think the vlog is even worthwhile because I'm just complaining, and it's not very entertaining. So, as for the February TBR, everything's going pretty well so far. I've already blitzed through one of the books on my TBR. Lots more physical books being got through this time, which is great, especially considering that I actually went and bought books even though I said I wasn't gonna. Prepare for a book haul because it was quite a few books. But yeah, that's it from me. What did you guys read in January, and did you hate it as much as I hated the Uglies trilogy? Or did you hate it even more? I don't know. Let me know down below. And as always, thank you for being here. Thank you for sticking around. And I will see you next time.